Activity has a couple of ways the user can leave. They can press the exit button, which we have, which will finish the activity here. And also we've now intercepted when the user presses the back button using this on back press dispatcher and adding a callback. So we're now in a strong position to do something useful when the user tries to leave the app. Remember, we have this binding.edit text message, this field the user can type some text in, but we want to give them the chance to save their work before accidentally leaving. So a really good user interface and user experience would be to present the user with a pop-up dialog explaining that they're about to leave the app and checking if they're sure they really want to leave, or give them the chance to go back and save their work. We don't currently have a save button, but we can imagine that there would be. So the experience we want to say is when they press the back button, or if they press the exit button, perhaps accidentally, we'll show them a pop-up dialog saying, warning, you're about to leave the app, are you sure you want to leave? And then we'll give them a couple of choices. Yes to continue leaving, or no to go back and later on save their work, if we were to add a save button later on. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and comment out the on-destroy method again, but I'll leave that code there. So before I go ahead and show you the super useful widget we can use to do a pop-up dialog, we'll go ahead and make the function for it. So underneath the commented out on-destroy method, we'll do function, and we'll call it something simple like show dialog. And we'll do curly brackets. I'm just going to scroll down, and I think actually I'll close the project pane for the rest of this tutorial. We don't need to make any new files for this. Now, if you remember back to the section overview, there was one new widget we were going to be looking at in our Android toolbox, and that was the alert dialog. Now, there are many ways you can make dialogs in Android, whether it's a pop-up dialog that sits on top of the screen, a full screen dialog, a bottom sheet dialog. There's many, many different types of dialog. There's also lots of ways you can go about building them. But to make a simple pop-up dialog that sits on top of our activity or on top of our screen, Android provides a very, very easy way to do this. And this is using the alert dialog builder. It's a new type of syntax, so I'm going to go ahead and show you it in practice, and then we'll go over a few of the different ways we can customize it. So to make this alert dialog, you start off by typing alert dialog. So capital A, capital D, alert dialog. We'll be sure to select the Android X one. You can see there, the top one. So autocomplete. And then you do a full stop. So alert dialog and then full stop. And then it's this builder. You can see there, and curly brackets. Now, once you put the curly brackets in, it does need some context. It needs to know where to show this, what activity. Okay, so we'll say this. And now we have started the process of building our alert dialog. Now, there's a few situations in Android Studio where you might use what's called a builder, and it's a slightly unusual syntax. You might think you would assign this to a variable like this, and you could do that. Then you can start calling things on this builder. Okay. But actually, with builders in Java and Kotlin, and indeed in Android, you don't need to do this. You can simply do a dot, do set title, for example, and we can say warning. Then you can do another dot and set a message. This is my message. And then another dot for show. Okay. So this seems a bit unusual, all these dots one after the other. This is actually a classic programming pattern called the builder pattern. And you might think, well, what's going on here? Why am I doing dot, 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 one after the other? And the pattern basically prevents you from doing something like this, where you have a variable, let's say my dialog, and you do my dialog.setTitle, and you do my dialog.setMessage. Yeah, and then my dialog.show. So in programming, it's okay to make a variable and then call lots of methods on the variable, but the builder pattern, instead, after every method call, it keeps returning the same builder, the same alert dialog builder. So rather than having variable.function over and over again, you can simply just do dot, 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 dot like that. And this is a very quick overview of the builder pattern, which is a programming pattern, a design pattern for having your code in a certain way. I'm not going to go into any great detail on the builder pattern. I just thought it would be worth mentioning, as I don't think we've seen this idea of doing function after function after function before. And because this might end up being quite a long line, the convention would be, after the builder, you do a new line like that, but the dot still works. So dot set title, and then new line, dot set message, and then new line, dot show. Okay, so this is a classic builder in Android, the alert dialog builder, and this is the structure we would do it in. Every function sits on a new line, and it's absolutely fine to have a dot on a new line for a function. Okay, I'll delete all of this, we'll go back to having just our builder, and we'll make a new line, and I'll show you some of the core things that we can do with an alert dialog builder. So, as mentioned, one of the first things that we can do is do dot set title. And we can either reference a string from our strings, or we can just type it directly. So for simplicity, I will just go ahead and hard code my strings, although for best practice later on, you'll probably extract them to string resources. So I'll do some speech marks, and we'll just say warning, exclamation mark. And this will be a bold title at the top of our pop-up. So our alert dialog will now already have a title, but a title on its own might look a bit bare. So we'll do a new line, and we'll do dot, and now we'll do set message. So this will be some text that will be less bold, and it'll be like the body of our pop-up dialog. So set message, and now we'll say, you are about to leave the app. Are you sure you want to exit? Question mark. But if we were to call the show dialog method, we wouldn't actually see anything because the dialog won't actually show until you call one final function, which is .show. And believe it or not, that's all we need to do to build out a very simple pop-up dialog with a title and a message. No buttons just yet, we'll get into that in just a moment. But let's go ahead now and show this dialog. So we'll call the show dialog method from both the exit button. So I'll remove the finish line and put show dialog there. And I'll copy it. And I'll delete the toast in our back button callback. And I'll do show dialog there. And in fact, it'll probably look neater to have this in line. So I'll delete that and delete that. So we'll have a curly brackets in line, and we'll do the same with our back button callback. Okay. I often like to do my click listens and callbacks in line if it's just one line like that. So the exit button and the back button callback will both call the show dialog method. It said this could be private, I think. Yeah, so we'll make it private, that's fine. We only call it from within main activity. And then when the show dialog function runs, it's going to create an alert dialog builder, and then calling a couple of methods in this builder, set title, set message, and then finally .show. So let's go ahead now and run this and see what happens, see what it looks like. Okay, so in our app, and both the exit button and the back button should show the dialog. In fact, I'll just move it to this side. Okay, so we'll click the exit activity button. And you see that? We get this pop-up dialog in the middle of the screen, and Android even takes care of dimming the background to a grey, so you can definitely see what's in focus, our alert dialog. We have our title warning, and we have you're about to leave the app, are you sure you want to exit? But we don't give the user any options, any buttons to press. They do have a couple of options. They can click anywhere outside the dialog to dismiss it, like that. And I'll just launch the dialog again using the back button. And again, our back press dispatcher callback shows the dialog. So they can click outside the dialog to close it, and they can also press the back button to close it as well. So actually clicking the back button has a funny back and forth between dialog and no dialog there, okay? So it's a super easy thing to build, and it's quite a neat little thing, and it's a very common user interface, a very typical user experience for Android users. They're used to seeing pop-up dialogs like this, so it is a very good thing to use in your app. So we should go ahead and give the user a couple of options in this dialog, so we'll go back to our code. And between the set message function, but the .show thing, which needs to go at the end, we'll put some line breaks, and we'll put some more functions. So there's actually 3 buttons you can set by default in an alert dialog builder. And the first is our positive button for when the user wants to say yes or to confirm what you're asking them. And you do that with .set positive button. And it takes a couple of parameters, the text, and then a listener, a click listener. But this time it's a dialog interface click listener, not a view click listener. Slightly different to our button. Well, we'll go ahead first and set the text. So we'll do, are you sure you want to exit? And we'll do yes. Simple as that. And then we'll do a comma. Now, we could do our complicated object dialog interface dot on click listener for our anonymous class. We could do it like that and implement the method. Okay, that looks a bit clunky. But we're actually getting suggested to convert to the Lambda. Okay, so just like with our button click listeners, we can use the Lambda interface. So I've gone ahead and done that, but it looks a little bit funny. We have these two, well, they're actually parameters, dialog, comma, and which. 2 parameters we don't actually need. If I go ahead and undo the Lambda conversion, you can see that in this click listener, we have a couple, comma, and which. I haven't done that. Actually getting suggested to convert to the Lambda. Okay, so just like with our button click listeners, we can use the Lambda interface. So I've gone ahead and done that, but it looks a little bit funny. We have these two, well, they're actually parameters, dialog, comma, and which. 2 parameters we don't actually need. If I go ahead and undo the Lambda conversion, you can see that in this click listener, we have a couple of parameters, dialog and which. So I'll go back to the Lambda again. I'll have the 2 parameters, dialog, comma, which, and then the arrow, and then I'll put this on a new line. Okay, this might look a little bit strange. I'm going to remove the to-do. So we have our text, and then we have our Lambda, our curly brackets for the click listener. But we have these 2 parameters, and we get a warning saying they're never. I'm going to remove the to-do, dialog, comma, a couple of parameters, dialog and which. So I'll go back to the Lambda again. I'll have the 2 parameters, dialog, comma, which, and then the arrow, and then I'll put this on a new line. Okay, this might look a little bit strange. I'm going to remove the to-do. So we have our text, and then we have our Lambda, our curly brackets for the click listener. But we have these 2 parameters, and we get a warning saying they're never used. They could be renamed to underscore. So this is going to look super weird, but we'll go ahead and follow their suggestion. So Alt Enter, Option Enter, rename to underscore, rename to underscore. So in this strange Lambda pattern where you have just the curly brackets, you don't have the anonymous interface or the anonymous class. The pattern is if you do have parameters in that method like we did, they would go here with an arrow. Okay, so the which and the dialog parameters, they go here. You can call them whatever you want. First param, second param. But it is good to call them something descriptive if you use them, so you know what they actually refer to. So one is a reference to the whole dialog, and one is telling you sort of which button was pressed. But we don't actually need to know which button because here we are inside the yes button, click listener. So it's actually okay to not use these, and if you don't use them, the convention, the recommendation is to rename them to underscore. So this might look a bit weird. So definitely keep this code saved for your reference if you do alert dialogs in the future. But this tends to be the pattern. Set positive button, the text or the string, then the Lambda, the curly brackets, and then don't need, comma, don't need the 2 parameters, and arrow. And here's our click listener. And if they say yes, we'll go ahead and finish. And we can just run this now, so we'll click run. So we'll press the exit activity button to see what this looks like. And we now have a button, and it's styled and themed in our app's colors, which by default is purple. So if I was to go ahead and press yes now, the app would close. Fantastic. So that's the positive button, and that's usually in the bottom right of dialogs. Well, the other one, of course, would be the set negative button, and we'll say no. And this time we'll type out the click listener from scratch. So after the brackets, we'll do curly brackets, and we're getting a warning because we haven't declared the 2 parameters that is in the click listener interface. One for the dialog interface, and one which is an int, which actually refers to the ID of the button. Now we don't need to know what the ID of the button is. We know we're in the negative button click listener, the no click listener, but we're going to want to dismiss this dialog to get rid of it if the user presses no. And this time, unlike in the yes click listener above, we are going to need access to the dialog interface to be able to do that. So we'll go ahead and we'll name the first parameter dialog, which it is, and we'll leave the second parameter, the one that's called which, for which button was pressed. We'll leave that unnamed with an underscore, and we'll do the arrow. So now when the user clicks no, well, in this click listener, we have access to the dialog, and there's a wonderful little function we can call, which is called dialog.dismiss. And that will get rid of the pop-up dialog, okay? So I'll go ahead and run this now to show you how the no button works nicely. This time I'll try to leave the app using the back button. Warning, you're about to leave the app. Are you sure you want to exit? Well, we know that yes will finish activity to leave the app, but no, we're calling this dialog.dismiss method. And we have access to the dialog with the dialog parameter that was given to us in the click listener. So if I press no, well, that has the same effect as actually clicking outside the dialog or as pressing the back button. Okay, so that's quite a nice user experience. Warning, you're about to leave. Are you sure? Yes to leave, or no to go back. And this dialog, just as we have it here, would be a good user experience, but I want to take a moment now just to show you a couple of extra things you can do with alert dialogs. So there are actually 3 buttons, 3 default button positions, positive, negative, and a third one which is set neutral, a neutral button. Now this would be good if you had like a more info or get more help or some kind of other destination. So rather than a yes or a no, a positive or negative, you might have something that isn't positive or negative but is something else. So we'll do a pretend more info, even though there's not really much more you can say about are you sure you want to exit. But just for the example, we'll say more info, and we'll do the click listener again. We're not going to need access to the dialog or the which parameter this time, so I'll do underscore, comma, underscore. I know this syntax looks a little bit strange, but it's just the shorthand for doing the full anonymous inner class, which I'll just quickly do now to show you. On click listener, I'll do the curly brackets, I'll use the error to implement the on click. So we have 2 parameters here, dialog and which for which button, okay? So the shorthand for all of this junk, all of this cruft here, is to actually move to the Lambda, those curly brackets, and then just put those 2 parameters there. If you don't need them, you do an underscore, okay? Just thought that'd be worth covering again. I hate glossing over things, but also it's not important to really care too much about this syntax, just to realize that it is slightly new to us, okay? So we have our neutral button with more info, and we'll just do a simple toast, I guess. So toast.makeText, context would be this activity, that's fine. This is where the more info screen could be, exclamation mark, toast.lengthalong.show. But we would probably still dismiss the dialog, so actually I will include the dialog variable, and after the toast we can straight away dismiss the dialog. That could look okay. Oops, I've got a mistake, so I've got one too many curly brackets there, so let's delete that one. Okay, that fixes that. We can run this now to see our neutral button, to see what position it's in. So the neutral button goes over to the bottom left, so it's kind of away to the side, and clicking that gives us our toast message. So that's the 3 buttons, positive, negative, and neutral, and knowing now how to implement those 3 different buttons should give you lots of options when designing the choices for your users when you give them pop-up dialogues. Now there is just one more thing I want to show you because it's very cool. So rather than set message here and having just text in the middle, it's actually possible to set a whole view, a whole layout that you've made in the XML design editor. So I'm going to go ahead now and comment out .setMessage, and underneath it I'm going to do .setView. It's possible to either have a view object and code or a layout resource ID, r.layout. Whatever view you want, okay? So I'm going to go ahead now and make the world's quickest layout for our dialog. I'm going to absolutely fly through this. So I'll go to project and I'll go to the resource folder and layout, and I'll right click and do new layout file, and I'll make a dialog_warning. Okay, it's not an activity, it's not a fragment, it's actually a dialog, so I'll start with the word dialog, good conventions. I'm using constraint layout. I'll get rid of the project pane for just a moment, and I will do an image view. You can have literally anything that you want here, and I'll do top to the top of parent, and I'll center it horizontally, and the way I'll do that is using opposing constraints, so start to start of parent, end to the end of parent. Now I think I'm going to want some kind of funny icon, so I'll go to my resource manager, and I'll do a new vector asset. What can I choose? I'll type the word warning, see what it finds me. Yep, that one could look good, the filled in warning exclamation mark, so we'll do OK. Now I think I'm going to want some kind of funny icon, so I'll go to my resource manager, I'll do a new vector asset. What can I choose? I'll type the word warning, see what it finds me. Yep, that one could look good, the filled in warning exclamation mark, so we'll do OK. So I see. Yep, that one could look good, the filled in warning exclamation mark, so we'll do OK. So I see baseline warning, we'll do next and finish. So now I can set as my image view source the, what was it, warning thing we just made. It's not very big, so let's make it maybe 48 dp. It's a vector, so it should resize nicely. That looks okay. It might look nice in a different color, and you can tint icons. So I'll do with tint. It's actually going to need to be, I think, app tint, but I'll find the purple color. There we go, purple 500. Yep, I'm getting a warning. It must be app tint, not Android tint. That's fine, app tint. Some things are in the app namespace, some are in the standard Android one, and usually Android Studio is pretty good at telling you. I don't think I've shown you tint before, so there's a new attribute for you. I'll give the image view an ID because I want to put some text underneath it, so I'll say ID, just image view icon. And then underneath it, I'll do text view. Do wrap content, wrap content. We'll put the same text as before, so we'll say you are about to leave the app. Oops. Are you sure? Question mark. I'll close the results manager. And we'll put this under the image, so top to the bottom of the image view icon. We'll make sure it's centered, so start to the starter parent, and to the end of parent. We'll give it a bit of margin, margin top, 12 dp, and give it a style, a type of text appearance. There's some default ones that Android gives us. I can do body 2. Yeah, that looks nice and bold. I like the text a bit bigger, text size 16 SP. I know I'm absolutely flying through this, but it's a good experience for you to see some of the attributes you may have seen before, as well as how you can quite quickly build out layouts. And the final thing I do is I give the whole thing a bit padding. So padding, I don't know, 2040p, squeeze it in a bit. That looks okay. So I've built a layout there in record time. So rather than setting a message, you can set a whole view, a whole layout. So r.layout, dialog warning. So if we go ahead now and run this, and we show our dialog, you can see we have the icon, we have our new text view styled a bit bolder, a bit larger, okay? So with an alert dialog, you can put any layout you want in the middle, or you can just have a message, one or the other. So these alert dialogs, especially using this alert dialog builder, are super useful. It's a really good user experience to offer your users choice at various points, but in a way that isn't intrusive, that just is on top of the screen they're already on. And with this builder, you've got titles, messages, views, 3 buttons you can use. You've actually got quite a lot of control to customize this the way that you want it to look. And of course, I can click no to go back, I can click more info for our neutral button, and I can click yes to finish the app. And that is the